Oh, that's the only problem. Oh,
I'm on mute.
no, so there's gonna be 15 minutes of dead space before the thing starts, but hold on. Too late.
Oh,
That's the order of it, and then it's projects that are coming out of that, and it's a project.
I see, so it's a joint project.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we're gonna have to switch more.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there just one more, Erica?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
All right, should we start your role?
No, I don't think we need that much
Why don't
more
we
space.
do this one here and then just move the cars instead of the easels? Put the other one right here. And move the cars. So it's funny, this, my son.
I was gonna say, I want to disagree with the supervisor. We're trying to keep all the town rush boards together.
No, that's what I'm saying. Just that we're gonna put the easel here and just take the cars.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
that was.
So it's funny, my son was going to RET for, applying to RET for doing a dual major in
Yes.
graphic arts and creative work. So he could have do one as the major and one as the minor. When he first started at graphic arts and found they had to create a portfolio and the whole 9 yards. And then when he went to the creative writing, he just had to do a lesson. And so he decided to apply to the creative writing. And do the minor in art. And he was like embarrassed about it to say it. He said, because he chose that way, he didn't want to have to put together a portfolio. And I said, don't be embarrassed. I said, there's no reason to do more work than you have to do this. I said, I'm a hard worker, but I'm lazy. But I said, I don't want to do any hard work that I don't otherwise have to do. So I'm always looking for the most efficient way to do things. Which obviously, when you get out of the business world, trying to maintain costs, that's a great skill to have. So, our goal will never be embarrassing.
I think the other thing I would understand the second part of the
He's still learning. It's just like, well, I felt like I was certain. You're not.
How old is he?
He just turned it. Ours is graduation, yeah. Thanks. Our second born is 2 years behind. It'll be nice once they're through the teenage years and actually don't mind hanging out with us again. Usually when they get to college and meet some of the other kids and what they had to go through with their parents, they're like, so bad. I do remember getting to college, first trip home, I said to my mom, oh my God, I knew you guys were good parents. And then before he stopped, he's like,
I know.
this is our father.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, anymore. We have a hand on it and then. Yep, okay. Wow. I was really worried that this was still okay.
Yeah.
I was also worried.
This I remember. Oh, I'm sorry.
Complete streets. It's also known as an active transportation plan, or part of an active transportation plan. We can send you what we did. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, the state DOT and county DOT are bound by it. So, is there a reason that one's on the ground?
Yeah, these are just references.
Okay.
You have questions.
Okay. Do we want to put them somewhere else or?
Kind of on the ground here.
So we do have an easel or two for our own.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. I did have another email. You're right.
So there's the big heavy duty one right there.
Yeah, let's just put this on there. I'll do it as well.
Where the signage sheet here.
Did you don't need that one?
No, excellent.
Beautiful.
Do is I'll raise this a little so that we can look at these one right in front of the other.
Yeah, my Lent ended a little, my time, so it was over.
Jerry? Hi, Sam Sandler. Please meet you. Hi, nice to meet you, Sam. I think we did. Nice, sir.
Good to see you. Good. Yeah.
Hey, Greg.
I'm not a fan of it anyway.
Yeah, I can just, I don't have to use the mic.
I can't find it. I was gonna give it to you. I can't find it. I don't know where to
Yeah.
store it. I mean, nothing
As long
else.
as they can hear me through the computer.
Yeah, you just gotta grab your microphone. Anyone will work, you just gotta make sure.
Literally pick it up.
Yeah. As long as it's on green light.
Like that.
Feel like Bob Barker. That's my era.
I'm here all night.
She's like, who's that?
No, I know who Bob Barker is.
He was on. This will be the one. Let's put that one back in there. Okay. I like something like the door Carol Merrill is standing in front of. That was old. Tom Cruise movie with Dustin Hoffman, right? Check. Rainman was a great movie. This gives you lots of things to walk around. I don't know. The price is right. Right, Bob. That's what we're going to slide for.
And is there a specific page? Yeah, actually, yes.
Yeah, you can turn around when it's towards you. Yeah.
So it's all over here.
That's fine. They stopped at that place. It's like, stop. Right, so. Right.
Zoom attendant, can you hear us?
Yes.
Great.
Want to turn this one off?
Hello? Hello?
No,
Guys,
That's good.
thank you, everyone. Hi. My name is Erica Tazer. I am the project manager for this project. I'm from EDR, or Environmental Design and Research. And we were contracted by the town of Henrietta and the town of Rush to work on this local waterfront revitalization program. And thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. This is the second community workshop that we've had for this project. And we're getting into the real exciting part. The project's coming together, the plan document starts coming together. And so I'm hoping that we can share with everyone the excitement and add to the inertia once this plan gets adopted to get these projects on the ground. Hello.
just put her at the podium. Wow. Is this?
Hello. That sounds a lot better. Okay.
No, it should be a- it's- it's-
Hello. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
You should even be able to go over to the TV.
Perfect. Try that. Okay. So again, my name is Erica. Welcome to tonight's presentation. Tonight we'll be going over what we're doing here with what is called the LWRP, or Local Waterfront Revitalization Program, here in the town of Henrietta and the town of Rush. And we will go through what the LWRP is, where it occurs along both the Genesee Riverfront and the Erie Canal. We'll go through some of the policies that it's going to implement, and then some of the projects that will ultimately get funded once the towns adopt this LWRP. They're eligible for grants to implement projects. So welcome, everyone, and welcome to our audience online. Thanks for joining. You get to the next slide, Craig. At the end of this presentation, the whole big focus for tonight isn't the presentation, but rather the open house here with the boards. We have Post-it notes, we have comment cards. We want to hear from you about what you think about these projects, if you have any other ideas, and just generally get your feedback on the process. So we'll have a short Q&A following the presentation, and then the majority of the time we'll be in conversation. So tonight we have a lot of representatives from the project committees. So the Waterfront Advisory Committee is represented by people from both the towns of Henrietta and Rush, and they're here tonight, available for answering any questions, and just generally having good conversations after this. We really want to hear from you. So again, I represent a consultant firm called Environmental Design and Research, or EDR. And we were contracted by the town of Henrietta and the town of Rush in this joint LWRP program. The towns are represented both by a steering committee, which is the town supervisor, deputy supervisor, and town councilor from both the town of Henrietta and Rush, and then guided by a larger advisory committee, or the Waterfront Advisory Committee, or who are volunteers from around the community invested in this waterfront. The program is a New York State sponsored program through the New York State Department of State. And these LWRPs are awards that are granted to communities around the state interested in revitalizing their waterways in different ways. So we'll go in more into that on the next slide. So again, this LWRP program is a state-run initiative, and it's both a planning initiative and a regulatory initiative. So from the planning side, it evaluates waterfronts, and from the community, prioritizes different projects and ways to bring people back to the waterfront and connect communities to their local waterfronts. Public access is a big focus, natural resource revitalization. There's been projects that facilitate if an area wants to have more waterfront venues, like commercial development, that can happen through LWRPs. And this is really a way to undo some of the ways that communities have turned their backs to their waterfronts over the past 100 years. So that's the focus of the LWRP program. It is a tool to also align state, federal, regional goals around the waterfront. So in that way, it's a regulatory plan document. So anytime a federal or state action is slated to occur within an LWRP area, that area is, or those agencies or organizations are obliged to look at the LWRP document and follow the goals of the community for that waterfront. So in that way, it's a really good protective tool to keep waterfronts active and vibrant and aligned with the community values. What else here? Yeah, I think I covered everything on this slide. On the left side here, you can see some examples of LWRP projects that have occurred around this area. Rochester, the city of Rochester has an LWRP and has already implemented projects to help with the Genesee River that crosses through the city there. Yeah, I really should have let everyone introduce themselves. I'm sorry.
So I just wanted to say that the other aspect of the LWRP, so it has state agencies, federal agencies have to align with your local waterfront program. It also is a way of guiding private development. So when there are projects, for example, that are proposed, once your LWRP is adopted, a project is proposed by a private developer, say it's a subdivision or it's a new retail store or some sort of commercial investment within the waterfront area, that project also has to align with the goals that are set forth in your LWRP. So it's a regulatory instrument in a variety of different ways. It governs state, federal, also municipal actions within the waterfront and private actions. So there's a lot that it helps to regulate and guide once the plan is adopted.
Okay, next slide. So here in Henrietta and Rush, we've been working on this document preparation and planning process for about a year now, I would say. We've had one community workshop last September, and I recognize a few familiar faces from that. And this will be our second community workshop before the final open house presentation at the end, which will occur after the state has reviewed it and signed off on it, and it's consistent with how the state basically formats and, for the consistency purposes, they review it to make sure it aligns with the state goals. So at the very end, we'll have another open house public meeting. So meanwhile, behind the scenes, there's been several meetings with the Waterfront Advisory Committee from the local representative volunteers. And then bi-weekly, the steering committee, so that team of the town of Henrietta and the town of Rush meet with us to keep track of the process. And yes, we've had several working groups as well. Henrietta and Rush both have been very vibrant. So part of the LWRP program is putting forth a local match, and volunteers are part of that local match. So it's super important for these LWRPs to have the volunteers participate in the process. And we've been doing that through these working groups for different projects. So those working groups have been meeting throughout the year as well. Yes. Yeah, they've been open throughout. So there's been some advertisement on the website, and at our last meeting, we took signups for different working groups. Yeah.
most of our working group members came from the last one of these meetings. So there were, in fact, like most of the Westminster working group is sitting back there. You know, we had some discussion, people expressed an interest in a particular project and we would follow up on that. Some of it was, so for instance, one of the things we're working on is there's a problem pond. It's called Lake Pamela. It's in Riverton. So we reached out to the Riverton HOA, but there were also a couple people from around the town. And typically there's one person from the Waterfront Advisory Committee who's also part of the working group. But we welcome anybody and everybody who wants to be part of, if there's a projects of interest to you, let us know. And I can add you to that working group. Well, or Amber if it's in Rush.
Yeah. Oh, so let me paraphrase into the microphone. The question was, how can people participate in these working groups, and have the working groups been open to the public throughout the process? Does that summarize your question? Okay. So the next slide will get further along into our LWRP here in Henrietta. So the first step of creating a local waterfront revitalization program is to define your water body or waterfront. So that area guides the rest of the LWRP. We have made a map adjustment since our last public meeting, so I wanted to show that up here. And there's a map available here on the boards for you to look at. And we also have a mapper online, so you could zoom in and out and see exactly where it occurs. So one of the changes that we made, because these LWRP documents are somewhat legal documents, so they have to be defined by easily distinguishable features. In our previous version of the waterfront, we were mostly looking at natural features. Also, some parcel lines were included to follow, to make it easy to map. But because parcel lines can change and natural features, rivers meander, we were requested by DOS to follow roadways. And so we branched it out to East River Road, basically. And it goes inwards at the town of Rush, and then a little outwards up by RIT to follow some other roadways. But yeah, the main focus of this is on the Genesee River, and then there is a piece of the Erie Canal that goes through the town of Henrietta, so we included that as well. And next slide. So the policies that are implemented by this LWRP pertain to these topic areas here. So everything from development, making sure that it's consistent with the revitalized waterway, fish and wildlife habitat protection, public access, recreational amenities. Sometimes agricultural lands occur near waterfronts. So these are the LWRP programs. Some of them don't always pertain to every area along the waterfront or every project that's proposed for a waterfront, but they comprehensively provide this, this set of policies that have to be looked at and evaluated. And we have a copy of the policies printed here if you're really interested in getting into it and seeing what they occurred or include. We could post a copy online as well. It occurred to me that we have shared it a lot between our committees and all the people working on it, but we can share that probably for public review as well. And then we have, this board here that kind of and we can just talk it through with you. I know it is quite a lot to look at and digest, but so how these policies are implemented is known as a waterfront consistency law, and it's a checklist form that would have to be reviewed for major developments. So this isn't going to include swimming pools or front porches, but rather if a large developer comes into the waterfront area, how are they going to support the goals of this LWRP? So things like public access, trail connectivity, stabilizing the shore banks, things like that are reviewed by the developers during this process.
If you're at all familiar with the approval process, stuff like, there's something called the State Environmental Quality Review. Most people refer to it as SEQR, SEQR. And so basically, if it's a project that's going to come under SEQR, as part of that SEQR review, they're going to have to hit all those things. If it's a small project, like she said, a swimming pool, a porch, it's not going to, that's not subject to SEQR review. It's not going to hit this. The one exception where it could affect residents is the shore stabilization. So if you have a property that goes right to the shore of the river and there is a tree that's helping hold that shoreline up, you're not allowed to remove it because it will destabilize the shore. But whether that's truly been in here or not, that's something that you got, like I said, that's not a good practice, not if you want to keep your yard. So if you think you're paying too much taxes and you want to reduce your acreage, remove the trees.
Okay, next joke. So as I was saying, another and probably the more interesting and exciting part of this process are the projects that are being put forth. There are several that have been proposed, and here they are listed out, both in the town of Henrietta and the town of Rush. And tonight's focus will be looking at those projects on these boards, talking to the people that have been working on these committees, which should have name tags on, and can hear your comments, absorb them. You can write them down on sticky notes or on comment cards, and just let us know what you think of them. Do they resonate with you? Did we get something off, miss something? This is your chance to really review them and let us know. So they range from different focuses. So we have some projects along the Erie Canal, so a boat launch, and this towpath village, which I think the supervisor is going to talk about a little bit more, and then Counselor Corbin from Rush is going to also talk about some of the Rush projects as well too. Then we have along the river, we have recreational amenities at parks, at Valentine Bridge area, some of the retention ponds that flow into the Genesee River, looking at the water quality issues there. How can we improve the runoff systems to make them better, more enjoyable to be around, and attract people to that water body? And down in Rush, we have some amazing ecological restoration projects and boat launches, and just a lot going on here. And then through it all, we have this really great idea to create a Riverwalk. So something that can not only act as a local trail amenity, but also a regional trail. And it connects into the Black Diamond Valley, Lehigh Valley Black Diamond Trail system, as well as the Genesee Greenway, right on the other side of the river. And from there, just offer, even more connectivity to the water bodies that we love here. So I think that concludes pretty much the present. What's the next slide? Okay, yeah, these are just an overview of all the boards. We do have some maps of natural areas along like these existing conditions maps. This project builds upon a lot of previous planning efforts done both in the town of Henrietta and the town of Rush. So we provide an overview of those projects, things like an active transportation plan here in Henrietta, the comprehensive plan in Rush. And all of these things are hope towards the same goal. That's the idea, right? So we want everything to build off of each other. And then around the back here are project boards. So we have both town of Henrietta on this side facing the wall, and then the town of Rush towards the doorway. So I think that concludes, oh, and then if you go to the last slide, Craig, this is our website. It's on the town of Henrietta's website, henrietta.org/LWRP. So there we have copies of the boards posted if you want to look at them afterwards. We are wrapping up the LWRP document in the upcoming months. So please let us know now what you think. This is the time. And yeah, stay engaged with us so then we can tell you when we're done and we can all celebrate that this thing gets adopted. Yes.
I just wanted to say one other thing about the project. So we talked about the regulatory framework that the LWRP creates. The other thing that it does is it positions both towns to be able to get capital funding to implement these projects. And there's been a change in the last 5 or so years in the program. It used to be a 50-50 match. So the state would give you 50% and you would have to come up with 50% of the cost. Now it's 75-25. So local municipalities only have to put in 25% of the cost. The state will kick in 75% of the cost. And all of the projects that have been identified and that we're soliciting feedback for tonight are going to be eligible for those capital dollars moving forward. So each year, the state has a funding process called the Consolidated funding application, and both towns will be able to submit funding requests through that process each year to fund these capital projects. They can only do that once the plan is adopted. And adoption happens at the town level. So each town has to adopt the LWRP, and it also gets adopted at the state level. So that's why it can become a regulatory document, because everybody's agreeing to it. And there, as we move forward with the process, all the state agencies get a chance to review it. The public will get a chance to review the full document, and state agencies get to review the full document so that we can all agree that this is what we're doing moving forward. Okay, so that's really the full process. And once that's done, once it's adopted, it's regulatory. Everyone has to comply with it, and you get money, which is the nice benefit of the program.
The other thing I will add is just because it's in the plan doesn't mean we're necessarily going to do it. But if it's not in the plan, it makes it very difficult to get funding for it. So like one of the ones is we were approached by the folks who live in the Chesapeake Ponds Preserve area. They had asked us, would the town take over your pond? And I said, well, not without a lot of work. So I would put it into the LWRP. And that way, if we do decide to take it over, we can get funding to do all the work that's needed to improve it. Somebody just wrote a letter upset that, how could you even consider this? You didn't talk to us. Well, for us to do that, because it's currently private property owned by the HOA, under their HOA bylaws, they would need a 2/3 vote of all property owners to say, yes, transfer it to the town. So it's not going to happen unless the residents want it to happen. But if it's not in the plan, then we'd never be able to get funding for it. So it just opens the door for possibilities. There's some that we're going to move quickly on, right? The canal, Towpath Village and Canal Side Park. Have a great partner in the JCC, and we've been working on that. In fact, the one thing, Sam was saying, you can't get funding for any of these projects until the plan is fully approved. The one thing we can go after funding for this year is design planning. So in order to build the pier on the canal so that boats could pull up to this location, or there could like be paddle boats off of it or whatever, we need to do a design to get approval that gets then approved by the New York State Canal Corporation. So I've already gone out, got a price estimate from BME, who does a bunch of that work. So we're going to submit that for this CFA funding for this year. You can't do a capital project before your plan's approved, but you can do a design project before it's approved. So I don't know if the town of Rush has something similar, but you could go after one as well. But it's also why I've been kind of a slave driver and cracking the whip in terms of I've set a really aggressive pace for this project because I wanted to be submitted before the end of the CFA period. So that we could get some money, as I put it. I don't know how long I'm going to be in office, but I want to see some of the fruits of this labor. So the other one that we're going to move aggressively on the following year is the Riverwalk. And in fact, we've been working with Fred Ranieri, right? One's Ranieri and one's Rinaldi. So whichever, but they're Fred's at the Riverwood Tech Campus, the former Kodak. He's actually built the first part of the Riverwalk on his property already. Now you go south and it just kind of ends where his property ends, and it becomes RG&E land. But we've already talked to RG&E about extending that beyond there. And from there, we have a developer who is the Foxfield. They're donating the land along the river to the town so we can continue it through there. We're negotiating with one resident is in between. And so hopefully we'll be able to get across his land. If not, I pointed out to him, you may not like that. We're going to have to come around your property on 3 sides. But we'll see. He's a nice guy. Hopefully we'll be able to work something out. One of the things I will point out that when we do that, included in the funding for that could be the acquisition cost of the fair market, because anytime we take over land as a municipality, we are required by law to pay fair market value unless someone, of course, donates it. Typically, when land gets donated, it's because of what's called clustering. So they can build a certain number of houses. It's cheaper to build the houses closer together. Well, under New York State law, you can do that, but then the open land has to stay open and can never be developed. Well, a developer doesn't want to pay taxes on land he can't develop, so he donates it to town so they don't have to pay taxes on it. If it's useful, we'll accept it. If it's not useful land, we typically don't. But so like I said, those are the 2 projects that we're moving the most aggressively on. But some of the other ones, there's an improvement for, we currently have a lot of people even don't even know it exists. There's a firehouse on the river. They have a boat. In order to, if they need to do an emergency, they have to put the boat on a trailer, drive it around to Chilai, go into the boat launch there and launch it. So this would give them a ramp that would allow them to launch straight into the river for the rescue. They'd still have to pull out over at the other location, but this way they could get in the water very quickly and respond. So there's a bunch of things like I said, in a lot of different areas. We've talked about doing improvements to the Riverton golf course. And some of it's even just like in some places it's adding restrooms, right? Our golf course has no restrooms. There's at the clubhouse, but not out on the course. Well, that's not fair to women who can't just easily walk up to a tree and relieve themselves, right? So it's kind of sexist, in my opinion, to not have restrooms. So we're looking at things like that. So a lot of different stuff. And then, as was mentioned, Rush has a lot of interesting projects too. including the Monroe County Fairgrounds are down there. And they've not done a whole lot. There's not been 4-H events down there because their facilities need a lot of upgrade and it's not cheap. And whereas I used to think that the Monroe County Fair was done by Monroe County, it's not. It's a separate organization. So this would be able to build them the grandstands and stuff like that, that they could then get 4-H events and help fund. The other thing we're looking at, they have one little kind of thing lacking, and that's water. There's no water service to that area. So we're working on getting that done as well. There's a transportation museum there. There's a railroad museum there. There is this large Rush Riverside Refuge, including 100-acre woods conservatory. So they're going to do trails all through that. And then we're also working with continuing the Riverwalk. We've been in discussions with the industry school about obtaining land along the land or an easement along the river to continue the trail all the way south to the Black Diamond Trail. And if you're not familiar with that branch of the Lehigh Valley Trail, it actually crosses the river on the old railroad bridge and connects into the Genesee Valley Greenway Trail, which runs from Genesee Valley Park in the north down through Letchworth Park in the south, all the way out to, it used to be called the Shakers Plantation. I think it's Nunde. I only know it as the old name because my father worked for the railroad, and his job was dealing with rights of way and grade crossings and stuff like that. Well, he worked for Pennsylvania Railroad, then he worked for Penn Central, then he worked for Conrail. He never changed jobs. They just kept merging. And one of the what was common is that used to be a canal. And what was quite common is that the towpaths for the canals would get turned into train lines. But that was not a high speed because of the twisting and turning. You couldn't go very fast over it. So when they now had 6 railroads merging together, that was duplicate track. They didn't need it. Well, when they got it, when the deed was sent to them, they were given the original giant plat maps. So they're 2 feet by 3 feet, 3 volumes of the original surveyor's maps of the entire canal. So it was really kind of neat. But like I said, back then it wasn't called Nunde, it was called the Shakers Plantation. So a little bit of trivia there. So like I said, it's a really wide ranging project. There's a lot of really neat things. Feel free to look. And if you have any questions on them, don't hesitate to ask.
So we have some post-it notes on the table, some markers, comment sheets. Let us know what you think. How are you? Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Yeah, yeah, actually, I think concert last night. Super fun. Consolidated, is that stage still, like, that. Yeah, this has been, the most active project. It almost feels like, yeah, it almost feels like one of those because of how typically they're, but exactly, yeah, 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 yeah. And it's been really
Did you get the funding for it? The grant?
I understand that, I would say, So the thing is, their manufacturing process materials that come out is but so they would have to deal with the RAC, manufacturing process. Oh, I, it's like, well, we need to do it, because that's just what you do that. Great job.